Welcome to Dr. Cindy Speaks, regular musings and reflections on politics, current events, and life as a congressional candidate. Dr. Cindy Banyai is a mom and small business owner fighting for our water, our health, our community. She's running for the people of Southwest Florida, trying to flip Florida 19 from red to blue. Listen as she speaks truth to power and gets real about being a mom and a candidate.
Hello, everybody. Dr. Cindy Banyai here for Dr. Cindy Speaks. I am a mom and small business owner fighting for our water, our health, and our community. And I am running for Florida Congressional District 19. That's Southwest Florida, Boca Grande, all the way to Marco Island, the Gulf Coast of Florida. And I am so happy to be running to represent my community and to be their voice and be the servant leader that people in Southwest Florida deserve. And today we are recording this on July 2nd, 2020, starting at 6:14 p.m. Eastern Time. So we are here today. We have another special guest. Today was a special day. We did a twofer recording. So in case you are listening to this at a later date, I have a brand new guest with me this evening to talk about the city of Fort Myers and what she wants to do to improve the lives of people here. So our guest, Diana Giraldo, is going to be calling in, so she can call in there. And as soon as we get her on the line there, we're going to let her come in. Let me just start while she's getting that ready to tell you a little bit about the history that Diana and I have had. We both have been around town as bike and pedestrian safety advocates, making sure that our streets are safe for everyone. And it looks like we got her in studio here. Diana, can you hear me?
Yes, Cindy, I'm here.
Oh, hello. Nice to have you here today. Thanks so much for joining me on Dr. Cindy Speaks.
Thank you so much for having me, Cindy. It's a privilege and also super excited to be here today.
Yes. And I am super excited for you and your run for Fort Myers City. I am so excited and proud. And I know that you just jumped in here recently. So why don't you tell us a little bit about why it is that you decided to run for city council?
Well, Cindy, this was something that I gave it a lot of thought. And yes, I signed up the day before the deadline to qualify. It came from intention and inspiration. As you know, I was a City of Fort Myers employee for 8 years in the Community Development Department and until 2014. And now I'm in the private sector, also practicing community development. And I have seen the direction of the city. Doesn't mean that it's going good or wrong, but there's no strategic plan. We haven't had a strategic plan in 10 years. And Ward 6 hasn't had the attention that it needs. It's one of the largest wards in the city of Fort Myers. And there was a lot of discontent in the community. And I just said, okay, I can sit here and just hold my breath, or I can jump in and do something about it. I have the experience, the qualifications. I'm an architect. I have a master's in management. Obviously, my experience in the city and being outside the city. And I have leadership skills, being the president and co-founder of the local nonprofit Streets Alive of Southwest Florida. So I have the tool belt ready, and I thought, it's coming from a good place. I'm super excited. And why not? I can be the change that we need.
Absolutely. And I love that. And, we do have that shared background in community development, and you've been on the technical side of it, and I have been on the civic engagement side of it in my world and the organizing component of it. And I love that. And I think that we need more people like us who are committed to community development, community service, and organizing to get things done. And I also think it's fantastic that you have the additional technical side on government, because what I have been really dismayed with recently is that people are getting elected for ego, for image, and they don't really have the skills to govern. And that's a problem for me. What do you think about that?
Yes, Cindy, absolutely. And this is a conversation that I have had with many of my supporters and organizations that have reached out. There are so many people that have the will to serve, and I think that's fantastic. But you need a different set of skills than just the desire to serve or some certain type of experience that might not be well aligned with what it requires to be, in my case, a city council person. And I think that the issue of that, like you said, could be ego, it can be image, it can be someone that really trusts you and they want to elevate you and they think that you can be that person that can take that job. But that doesn't not necessarily means that that is what the city needs. And at this moment, from my perspective. And the other part of it is that we have a large percentage of the population that are Latinos, and we should have representation of the fabric of our community at the city level. Currently, I serve in the City of Fort Myers Mayor's Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, and that's one of the topics that we have discussed. So yes, it takes a lot more than the willingness to serve the community, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me clarify too that I do think that there is a lot of space for a lot of different types of people in service, but I think there needs to be the commitment, like you said, to serve. And I think that we do need people who have skill sets that can contribute, and lots of different skill sets can contribute, but I feel like we're overly represented at this point with people who are in a handful of industries. I think in Southwest Florida, there's a lot of folks in development and real estate who are in key leadership roles, and that really shapes the way that these councils and commissions work. But I want to talk a little bit about your experience, like you just said, on that the Mayor's Diversity Committee. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and how you think it's been going?
Well, Cindy, that actually came from community kind of coming together. I was appointed to the committee in 2019, and it's coming along pretty well. We have made some recommendations to the city of Fort Myers. The city manager has responded about those, the request of integrating policy and system change in the city operations when it comes to diversity and inclusion. However, this committee is specifically part of the mayor's office. So while we have made substantial progress and we have made recommendations and there's some momentum going ahead, as you know, the mayor is not longer going to be the mayor at the end of this year because he's running for another position. So we might not have the ability to still be in that position of advisory unless the new mayor really wants to take it on.
Right. And of course, Randy Henderson is the current mayor, but he has stepped away and will resign at the end of this term. I believe, is it Terrellyn Watkins is serving as mayor pro tem?
Correct.
Yeah. And kind of filling that role. But we also have kind of an interesting way that our city works. And so, so it's kind of interesting to have that committee be part of the mayor's office because our mayor is, quote unquote, a weak mayor, meaning that they serve primarily in the role of the chair of city council rather than the way that it had been prior to when Henderson came into that role, which is a strong mayor, meaning that they are both the city manager and the chair of the city council. Do you think that having that office specifically attached to the mayor's office or that committee attached to the mayor's office leaves it specifically vulnerable to both political influence and continuation?
I think so. And here's the thing. This kind of came from the mayor's office. It was like community coming together in the mayor's office. So it's kind of up in the air where this is going to go. And honestly, there has not been a formal commitment from anyone in the city saying, yes, we're going to continue having this on. So it is a challenge. I really don't have a comprehensive answer, but that's just the perspective I have.
Well, I can appreciate that. And I will give my opinion on it because it is one of my competitors in this race. And I know that it kind of came up as part of this, what I might describe as a meager attempt at community inclusion, particularly with the Midtown project. And I have not felt like it was a really significantly committed project. And I know that actually when Henderson started to run his congressional campaign, and he came out with some pretty incendiary racist comments, particularly around female members of Congress, Ilhan Omar in particular. There was some folks that were on that committee that were very upset about it and were considering, resigning or something like that. And I'm not going to put you in a position where you have to comment on that unless you want to. But for me, I felt like I would have liked maybe a little bit more specific actions related to fortifying that committee as something that was going to have meaning beyond what seemed like a really superficial outreach to the community to kind of smooth over relations for things that they wanted and potentially even for his congressional run.
Right.
And if you don't want to comment, that's okay.
No, well, and thank you for opening that opportunity for me to say something. The only thing that I can tell you, and this is my personal opinion, is as a member of that committee, I could have taken the opportunity to leave because I felt offended just because the actions of what we were trying to do didn't match the actions of what happened, with the video and everything else that became so controversial. But as members of the committee, we are representing diversity and inclusion. By stepping away as committee and walking away from this very important task, then we're walking away from the community, we're walking away from representing diversity and inclusion, and we're walking away from being the change. So we felt that it was important that we stay strong and really provide as many tools as possible moving forward in hopes that we really can turn the page and incorporate some of our ideas and actions in the city of Fort Myers to represent and protect the employees, the residents, and the tourists that come to the city.
Well, great. And I can appreciate that. And I know that the folks who are serving on that committee, they are coming to it in earnest for change. It's really just the intention initially that had me a little bit like wondering.
I understand, but we could not get fixated on something that we dislike so much that we're walking away from the real intention and purpose of that project and that committee.
Absolutely. Well, I absolutely appreciate that. And, it's actually something long standing for me in this community in Fort Myers is I have been really wanting to see more meaningful engagement with our community. I feel like there hasn't been a heck of a lot of places where ordinary people can have their voice heard. And I remember very poignantly, it would have been probably 2011, as part of my advocacy work through Bike Walk Lee. And I had been this kind of little participatory person wanting to get everybody civically engaged. And I had a meeting with the mayor and I was saying, we need to have these kind of community forums and we really need to have people involved early on in the process of designing initiatives and things like that. Not at the end, right? Not like, here's our plan. Do you like it or not? Like
right.
Way before we get to that point. And I just remember very distinctly, him going, oh, well, that sounds like a nice idea, but I have no idea how we would get people involved. And then I don't know what we're going to do if we do. And I was like, well, I think we should still try. But I would love to see better processes around some of these things for engagement. And I know that there are groups around our community that are interested in that as well. So do you have any thoughts on how we might get people more involved in, governing our city and getting things moved in the direction that people in this community really want them to?
Well, I do think that the part of that just goes back to the diversity and inclusion. More and more, I talk to a lot of young people that are in high school or just graduating, they're going to college, and they feel like they're not part of the equation, that they're not being included, that nobody's listening. And then when you get their perspective and they're so open-minded and wanting to learn and wanting to be involved, I think that fostering the relationships with them, the younger groups that are super engaged. I mean, is the transition from, I want to say, millennials, and then the younger generation that comes after them. And don't ask me what's their name, like
the Gen Z or something.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't keep up with all the names. There is a big shift. Absolutely. And then the younger ones that they go after that, they're super engaged. So I think we have some momentum to try to get that organized, but we have to bring as part of the equation. We have to, rather than creating new groups, seeing the groups that they're already part of and seeing how we can incorporate them in some of these, even advisory committees at the city level. If you go look at the advisory committees at the city level, which is a good platform for engagement, there's a lot of openings, but there is also a lot of people that are in specific industries, and the decisions, people don't, in the community may not have the time and the ability to serve. And then these committees always happen at the time that everybody's at work. So how do we open a platform so younger generations get included, so we don't have to generate different groups, so we can find common ground in the advisory groups that the city has, and these groups that are already formalized in our community. I do think there's an opportunity to connect the dots. Don't ask me how right now, but I see that as a vision.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you what, I know that there are a lot of those advisory groups, but I will tell you, I've applied for about 6 or 7 of them over the years, and I never heard back from anybody. Not like a receipt letter, not like a phone call, not an interview, nothing. And so it makes me wonder how many people are like me who thought that they would want to get involved in serving on one of these committees was a way to do that. And then it never got any response.
And what you say is really interesting, Cindy. I was part of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee long time ago. And we lost people left and right, and we provided advice to council, and we just kind of never felt that there was like a real structure way of passing the message, keeping kind of projects on track, organizing, like no database. And if you look at the committees, which I go to some of the meetings, and I'm kind of up to speed with what happens with some of them. Every committee kind of has their own structure and way of addressing their meetings, and where they meet, and the time they meet, and the format they meet, and how they track their communications and action plans. So when one of my platforms, when I'm being part of as being the next councilwoman for Ward 6 at the city of Fort Myers, is really to do a system change and policy evaluation. And I think it goes as far as being able to look at some of these advisory committees and how they're working together for the benefit of the city. And that includes an open and transparent platform that other people can access. And that's one part of it. Now that we have had COVID and a lot of the meetings aren't happening, we could be having these Zoom meetings, but when you open that platform in addition to the in-person meetings, I think that there is an opportunity to get more people to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that idea of, getting it a little bit more, systematized so people will understand how to connect and there's continuity. And you just said two of my favorite words, which are systems change, like hyphenated, and evaluation. So I am 100% on board with that. But let me hear a little bit more about what else you want to do. So what is your vision for Fort Myers? What do you want to contribute as the next councilwoman for Ward 6?
So there are two things as my responsibility as the next councilwoman for Ward 6. One is the services that we can provide to the community of Ward 6, the level of service. As you know, part of Ward 6 was annexed to the city. It was part of the county before. And I was actually working at the city with when some of this transition was happening. And the city has grown so much in 10 years that some of the studies that we had, that are from maybe 2005 or something like that, do not meet the needs of what we have today. So the services that we're providing at the city level, the infrastructure, especially for the water pressure, quality of water, maybe some environmental concerns, traffic and connectivity, as the ward is concerned, we have to really evaluate that. So, and also address the communication system between the citizens and the city of Fort Myers as an open platform. Because when you file, you have a complaint or you have a case and you want someone to follow up, there is this CRS, Citizen Response System. So say that I called the mayor's office because I have an issue, and then the mayor does not respond directly. They open a case, they pass it to staff. Staff contacts me, we handle it, quote unquote, and then they respond in their own system and just tell the mayor, yeah, we took care of it, and that's the end of it. So when you look at that system, first of all, it's not transparent. But second of all, when we're looking at the infrastructure of the city of Fort Myers, if we already are collecting this information that cannot be going into the internal database that they keep track of, and they just put a check mark right next to it. We have the ability to track this information. If the complaints, if the issues, because we're talking about infrastructure and level of service, they're all are guided to, maybe it could be water, it could be a road, it can be, environmental concern. We have the ability to track this by incident, the type of incident, and the location of the incident. This will give us the ability to see as a ward that maybe if we have the same issue over and over and over in a specific area, we need to go back to policy and see, are we still doing the same thing over and over and over? I'm going to give you one example, and it's just going to be one of them. So let me back up for a second. If we do that, we can actually input this information on a map, and we can see heat areas where we have to stop scratching our heads and putting Band-Aids on it, but go back and look at the system, look at the policy, and see how we can address it. I believe that model, if it's managed, can be moved to a citywide system. Obviously, it will be silly for us to just focus on the ward. But, as the councilwoman, I'm super interested in seeing something like that take place. And so we have the ability to actually evaluate the budget based on that. When you come into a city council and say, I'm going to balance the budget, I mean, I can balance the budget all day long in one leg. But if we're going to put Band-Aids, we're never going to be able to go back to the issue. So my specific example, because then I get up into the air and don't tell you what the example is. The city of Fort Myers, I have filed a couple of complaints about completion of multi-use path and sidewalks. So I was actually advocating through Streets Alive, the nonprofit that I lead, complete a multi-use side path on 6 Mile Cypress and the corner of Winkler that connects a ton of children to 2 schools that are around the corner. It took me 4 years to make that happen, but I stayed on it. The multi-use path, the sidewalk multi-use path in Palomino, same thing. So here's what happened. I filed another complaint because we have a development around the corner that is almost finished and the sidewalk is not installed and they already put their landscape, their driveway, they're almost done with the buildings. I found out, and this is something that has been going on forever because it happened when I worked at the city. The developer paid in lieu of building the sidewalk. What does that mean? Rather than them building the sidewalk, they give the money to the city and the city is supposed to put the sidewalk. Well, this is what happens. That money goes to the general fund and it just becomes like a slush fund that goes anywhere else, but is never earmarked for connectivity and transportation. So I will likely have the developer finishes the project. They did what they told that they could do, right? And then they leave. And then the sidewalk is never installed. If you were putting that development there, you could not get a certificate of occupancy without putting the sidewalk. So what the issue is that it's actually in a city ordinance that you could pay in lieu of. That has been an issue forever and it continues to be an issue. So that's a system change. And when you have connectivity and traffic problems that are documented over and over and over, and they go on a piece of paper and they disappear and is not being tracked, then it's really kind of hard to know this. I know this because I used to work there, so I know that is a big problem. And so that's just one example of many, I'm sure, that are out there.
But that's beautiful. That's a really good example. I bet you there are so many people in our community that don't even realize that that's a thing. But what it sounds like to me is that that is actually a disincentive for our government to even hold them accountable, because it's better to have dollars that go unrestricted into the general fund and have that developer pay, and then nobody has to worry about building the sidewalk. Right? I mean, it seems like it's so rife for issues of noncompliance. And I know that you know, from the advocacy work that I had early on in Bike Walk Lee, is that there is not a lot of love in our city council or our county commission for building bike walks and paths and things like that, because there's a lot of things that go into that. So I can see how that can be a problem. Go ahead.
Yeah, and let me say something to that effect, Cindy. Being in the community development world, many people go back and they blame the developer, saying the developer came and they did this to us, and then they walked away. And in some cases that may be true, but in so many other cases, it isn't true. They try to do what they, you know, if it's in the code, you're allowed to do it. So you can't blame the developer when you have weak policies that allow for these things to go on. Then the other part of it is, I want to clarify, some of the current council people are really on board on having this connectivity addressed, because this is not just a matter of safely connecting our children to schools and communities to places of worship, the grocery stores and such, without having to use their car. So it's not just a matter of safety, but this is an economic development incentive to have in every single city in the entire world. So I speak to them regularly. I'm very involved. And there is a shift in that. As far as Ward 6, we have this we are very unique, and we're one of the newest wards, and we have this ability to make it amazing. But our current leadership on Ward 6 does not think that if we have a sidewalk across the street and corners, then that's sufficient. If we are unable to walk the streets where we are representing our community, we will never be able to get it. But I'm going to say that 80% of the council is on board to try to minimize these issues with connectivity, which is what drives me a little crazy.
Yeah. So there's one other question I have for you on that, is that the other thing that I remember about some of the pushback for these connectivity components was that there are some people who are working in the administration who think we are already done, that we already have complete streets and we don't really have a lot of work to do. What do you think about that?
Well, all right. Oh, good. You're opening the door for me. I'm diving in. Well, this is the world that I live in, and it is beautiful because I get to experience that world in my my current job as the as the business development director for E3 Building Sciences, which is my company, and we focus on sustainable development solutions and green building efficiency and things of that nature, but also with Streets Alive, which is all about recreating places for cyclists and pedestrians. The city of Fort Myers has not had a bicycle pedestrian master plan since 2008. And they never followed the 2008 bike path master plan. I was in the city of Fort Myers when this was being developed. I helped develop that part of that plan and talking about walkable communities and all that. We had a mayor's challenge. We did all kinds of things. And that goes on someone's shelf because nobody really wants to take the time to follow through with it. And there's been so much turnover at the city, especially in the engineering department, that you have somebody and then you're working with that person leaves and nobody knows what's going on. The bike path advisory board really does not have a structure, and you can't blame the board. The city has to provide the structure, and it just became so dysfunctional that I don't think that they have been meeting regularly. So that on its own is an issue. Every time I hear from administration that we are the most complete, complete streets community in the entire state of Florida, I want to see where that's at. I know that. I know that in the newer areas, that's the thing. But we have to go back and look at the infrastructure in some of the areas that are slated for redevelopment, in some of the areas that are already settled there, unless they're doing other type of work. They're not going to address the connectivity. So right now, the city of Fort Myers is actually working on their bike path master plan. The person that's managing the transportation, the engineer that's managing the transportation division there, is very understanding and supportive of complete streets. And you kind of need a champion inside that really truly believes in that. And we have been working collaboratively with them, but it's taking a long time for us to get there. But baby steps, so we're moving forward. So right now, there is actually a survey online that I don't think that has been well publicized, and that's the other issue. How we reach out to the community is a problem at the city level. And I say how we, because I feel so much part of the city of Fort Myers as one of the leaders of the community. Our ways of reaching out to the community, we're falling short. We cannot expect the community to chase the city, right? Oh, I have been told that I have a crowd that follows me, and if they don't follow me, then they will not know. That's not the way it works. My community and all the communities around, they have homeowner associations, they have coalition groups and stuff like that to try to manage, the communication. So if somebody does the research and then they find it, then can share with everybody else. But I talked to them about this bike path master plan if they have received the survey, because it's on a map and you click on it. Nobody knew anything about it. And so I've been sharing that survey so people can complete it. But when you look at the actual survey, there's very minimum involvement from the community altogether. So they don't know, and we don't know how to deploy those resources. We have to find different ways to get to the community.
Yeah, I absolutely love that and appreciate that. And that's something that I've been advocating for a while too in our city and in Lee County as well, because I think you're absolutely right. You cannot expect regular everyday people to be able to understand where exactly they need to interact or how they can, or, only typically the most vocal and upset and pissed off people are sitting there at the city council meeting, right? Like, so we have to kind of get out of this mindset of like, they'll just come, or that if people aren't, up in arms about it, that everything's okay. That's really not good, sound community development practice. And I would love to see further development of that. And I really think ultimately that will make our community a better place. The more voices, the more input that we have, the better we are going to be in the long run. So I appreciate you thinking in that space about how we can improve our city in that way.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
So let's take a turn. So because clearly both of us having this kind of passion for community development and passion for safe streets, that we could go on to the boredom of everybody trying to listen to us. But let me hear a little bit more about other things in our city that you have your eye on.
Yes, Cindy. So, we talked about traffic and connectivity. We talked about the system change and policy evaluation, which I think that using geographic information system as a tool to visualize not just our issues, but our opportunities, we can enhance our economic development. I'm a firm believer. Here's the thing. My platform, I'm going to tell you, is like 6 things on my platform. But they're not silos or standalone platforms. So one is traffic and connectivity. One is system change and policy evaluation, sustainable growth, innovation and technology, the environment, and diversity and inclusion. The example that I provided to you earlier about we can track absolutely. If we have the format, we can track absolutely everything through innovation and technology using geographic information system, using our mapping system. If you look, the city of Fort Myers created this development opportunity map that you can look at and you can see what's coming for development, what projects are underway, what projects are in permitting, what projects are completed. If we can do that, so people can visualize where new apartments are going, all that, we can do it with everything else. If you look at the sheriff's office, you can track crime, and it's in the same fashion. So you can log in and you type in your address, and then you can look at crime in your area. And that's exactly how we can integrate absolutely every single issue and every single opportunity. So they all are part of a comprehensive plan. And when we talk about a comprehensive plan, we're not just talking about the growth and the community development as far as neighborhood development of our community. We have to look at everything. When you put layers of that, when you put the layers of traffic, when you put the layers of environmental challenges and opportunities, when you put the layers of maybe some social problems that we have, some crime and things like that, and then you look at growth of our city, we really can start looking at opportunities for community development, how to address some of our issues. And I believe that because we're expanding and we are limited in how we grow, because we don't have anywhere else to go. Land is pretty much gone in the city of Fort Myers. There's very, very, very few parcels that are available. Is how are we going to do redevelopment? How are we going to create this sustainable growth tool that incentivizes multi-use transportation, but that impacts everything else? So my platform is more big picture. I'm a big picture person, but it integrates everything that's in my platform. We have the ability to do technology. I was at a city council meeting a couple of weeks ago, and my current council person said, I want an Excel spreadsheet of our projects, and for all of us to have them and know where we are and who's responsible and da 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 da. Why are we using spreadsheets? when you can have it on your, even while they perfect the system before this can become a transparent tool for the community to check out. Why are we using spreadsheets? It's not that they're bad, but they take somebody to go and update them and then send them back to you. Why don't you just use the system that you have to get it going? So that's kind of all part of my platform, just looking at the big picture of how we operate as a city. And that's going to help us really revisit our budget and making sure that we're allocating the resources responsibly.
Yeah, I love that. And that's so important to me as an evaluator as well, using data to inform our decisions and using that information then to devise our budget to be more efficient and effective. And I think that's absolutely important. I love the fact that you're talking about GIS and building those layers. The thing that I worry about with it, and you would probably even know better than me on this, but I worry that we don't have a robust system of data management overall beyond the city. I mean, just with partner organizations, because those are data intense projects. And, my experience working with different organizations here is that we try to go into organizations and help them to develop these systems to be data informed, and they do not have the capacity and they haven't invested in it. And so they are in spreadsheet land, if that. And the other thing that often happens is if they are connected to a state or federal organization that they have to do reporting on, they send that data into like an abyss for that reporting, and we never get to use it. And so we're investing in data and reporting, but not for the benefit of our own knowledge here. And it's been a painful thing for me, but I would absolutely love to see the further development of those data systems for the data use, just like you're talking about.
And you are absolutely correct in your statement about everybody's using this different, everybody's tracking something different, and we have Lee County and all the other municipalities. And as you know, they're part of the Lee County Metropolitan Planning Organization. What I have found that is interesting is that the Lee County MPO does not have a central database of all of this. So when we're making decisions, right, when there is a council meeting or an MPO meeting or, when you look at maps, you have like a PDF map and it's on the screen and they give you a copy of it. And then that kind of disappears and there's nowhere to track. And what I found out is that the municipalities aren't sharing the data with the MPO, or they have a different format. And I actually had taken the job of getting the MPO to purchase GIS because they didn't have a full license. So they're actually are putting it in their budget for this coming fiscal year. And then is saying, okay, municipalities, if you need me, as me being just the community person that's just super engaged, saying, all right, let's all sit down and talk about the format, but we can talk about the format in somebody's office, the city manager's office or the traffic engineer's office. We have to sit people at the table and say, the economic development branch of Lee County, because the city of Fort Myers does not have that. So let's look at things, what is important to everybody, and let's create a format that you may not have the entire set of data for everybody, but you have the opportunity to expand it and everybody's using the same format. So when you're sharing the information, we're talking apples to apples, right? But you're right, it's kind of putting all that together, just looking at just the planning side of it, not anything else, has been like, I'm uncovering things that I'm like, wow, we're not there yet.
No, I know.
No. So it's a challenge, but I think it's a terrific opportunity. Trust me.
Absolutely. And I agree. And I love that you know so much about it and you have such, value on it, because that's what I've run up against. And that's why I love that you're running for city council, because I know that when it comes time to budgeting for these processes and for the development of these processes and these alignments and for the investment in the data management and infrastructure, you're somebody who's going to champion that because you actually fundamentally understand why we need it. And I love that.
Right. And I've been trying to engage, the current council to understand that a little bit more, just kind of engaging them in conversation. And that's one of the other challenges. The council does not get the education they need from the city and from the community to understand this. So I would be a big proposer that training, education, and development is at least a quarterly program that council has to have, addressing the issues that should be part of a strategic plan. So council does not necessarily need a workshop about something that is coming up and 100 people showing up emotionally trying to stop the project because we already have an understanding of why this is important. So that's all kind of part of the same equation. My big picture is just big. It's just big, but I've seen what's to be inside and I've seen what is to be outside, and we can do it.
Yeah, we can with your leadership for sure. So let's take another little pivot here, because clearly we can wonk out on both, connectivity and planning issues as well as data issues. But let's talk about something that's kind of really current right now. So we are still in the middle of some, movements across our country with the Black Lives Matter after the murder of George Floyd. And there's a lot of discussion about police reform. And this definitely falls under the purview of City Council in Fort Myers. So can you tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are on how we can continue to improve community and police relations in the Fort Myers Police Department, as well as holding police officers accountable when things go wrong? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there are different. I think there are different ways of looking at this. I was actually today in a systemic racism forum, and it was very interesting just understanding the history of so many, different races and so many different cultures. And I think that it first starts with education, so people understand. I mean, we're all part of the fabric of this country and this community, regardless of where we came from, and we're all different, and we have beautiful colors, and we have beautiful accents and nationalities and all that. I see them all, and I embrace them all. When it comes to the police, I think that there's a lot of, obviously, part of the conversation is making the officers accountable, right? If they're not doing something that they should be doing. But it's not just the officers that commit a crime, given the recent incidents that have happened this year, but also anyone that thinks that they can cover that up because they don't want to tell on their buddy, right? And that will take a whole system change. For the city of Fort Myers specifically, they do have an inspector general has been hired recently to kind of oversee this transformation of the city of Fort Myers Police Department. I do believe that we have to support the police department in their transformation. We cannot expect things to change overnight or just defund the police or doing all of these things. Everybody's perspective is valid and all ideas are valid, but we have to really sit down and evaluate those to make sure that they're all inclusive of our entire community. One thing that I can say on systemic racism and all the changes that we have to have. So our City of Fort Myers Police Department should have a mental evaluation, diversity and inclusion evaluation and training when you join the workforce, and have some recurring, refreshers and trainings about this. Obviously, bringing this into the City of Fort Myers into the City of Fort Myers, period, but to the police department will be very significant. And and it will take also evaluating of their policies to make sure that anything that we put in place that stops some of these horrific acts are actually in line with their policies. Because if you look at some, their procedures might not be aligned with it, and I think we have an opportunity to make some serious changes. I also think that we should have every community. We have 6 wards in the city of Fort Myers, and we have this opportunity to have this. And I'm trying to brainstorm, and I've been thinking about how this will take place. We have fire stations, and we have an opportunity rather to have a different building, that these become like this center, like this hub where the police can include the community, and then have their community police there, and offering services and doing things for the community. So community are integrated, and you have actually police force that live in that community, that understand that community. So that separation stops happening. But it's going to take time, and it's going to be a long process, and we have to be patient, just even formulating the solutions. So if you work in government, everything moves. If you think moves slow in our world, sometimes be inside government, you will be. I told you about the sidewalk, just an example that took 4 years. So a lot of those changes are going to take a long time, and we have to be really, really strategic about it.
Yeah, I think you have to be strategic, and you have to have good management. Going back to like what you said about how there's no like centralized project management resource. Well, why not? We should absolutely have that. I wanted to share my thoughts on the police reform, because I've read the free report several times, and one thing that stuck out to me in that is the relationship of leadership and culture within the police department. And this actually echoes some work that a friend of mine did out of North Carolina A&T when he was researching police departments in North Carolina, is that there is a tendency to either not have leadership development or do what happened in Fort Myers, which is they lost their leadership because of the cost savings. They took people and they bought them out of their last couple of years to save a couple bucks and promote lower people up in the ranks. But what this ended up with was a whole police department that didn't really have senior people that were measured leading the organization, and it kind of had the effect of making the culture kind of crumble and decay in ways that were very negative for the community and for the force itself. And like I said, this has been borne out in research in other places. So as much as I appreciate the battle cry of defund the police, I would rather take that energy and kind of pivot it to invest in the necessary areas. And one thing that I advocate for that is participatory budgeting on a community level. So understanding thoroughly the community wants and needs, and then having the community help to allocate where the funds need to go in that. But you still have to be very strategic in the way that you develop a police force department budget, so that you're not essentially undercutting the culture because there's a finite amount of resources. It's really reallocating roles, responsibilities, and duties in different ways that are more aligned with what the community needs and wants in that area. And so there's a revisioning as to what it means to be a police officer, and what it means, what their purview and their scope of work ends up being as well. And that's just, that's, again, it's a very slow moving process. I absolutely appreciate that. But that's just some additional things from my consideration. My opinion on that is that we really do need leadership development, community involvement, and an alignment of all of that in order for us to get what we want in our community.
Yeah, I will have to agree with you. And let's think for a minute that when the city is just like any other organization, right? When you look at it as a structure, if I have employees and I work with them and make sure that everything that I need for them to have for them to do their job is in place and they're being evaluated and also rewarded accordingly, you will have the service and the response towards the community that you're investing in your employees. This connotation that because you're a government employee, you know, I pay my taxes pay for you to do your job, and it isn't like that. We have to stop looking at things in that manner.
Yep. You have to cultivate that leadership. So yeah, fantastic. Thanks for taking the time to speak on that. I know it's really not it's not our wheelhouse, so to speak, because criminal justice reform stuff is, right. I think you and I are much more comfortable in this, policy planning, evaluation space. So I appreciate you going there because I think it's really timely and people want to hear about that. But we're coming up on time here. So before we end here today, I want to hear the pitch for Diana to become our next city council woman in Fort Myers. So tell us, give us the pizzazz, the excitement. What is going to get people out and vote for you? So ready? Tell us.
All right. I am Diana Giraldo. I am your councilwoman for City of Fort Myers, Ward 6, proven dynamic, diverse leadership. I have 8 years of experience as a city employee in community development, 20 years of relevant experience in the public and private sector. I have bachelor's in architecture and urban design and a master's in management. And I'm also bilingual. I have the leadership background and experience we need to move forward. Again, I'm Diana Giraldo, and I am your councilwoman for City of Fort Myers, Ward 6.
Beautiful. Absolutely fantastic. And so after listening to this fantastic discussion that we've had here today, and you hear how committed and knowledgeable Diana is about helping our city, Diana, tell us how people can get involved with your campaign and what it is that you need.
Well, thank you, Cindy. Yeah. So one of the things that I'm doing is, we're super active in social media platforms, but I also have my website is diana4ward6.com. And I am listening. So one of the first things that you see is like, I'm listening, ask me a question. One of the things that I'm doing, I'm answering questions and I'm posting videos online as those questions come up. And the other part of it is that we have to support the diversity that we need that is representative of the fabric of our community. I am the first Latina to run for city office at the City of Fort Myers, and I'll be the first Latina elected as the City of Fort Myers Council. Running a campaign, as you know, is hard and is difficult. This is a pure grassroots campaign. I am not receiving any special interest money, and I do need the support of the community. So if anyone believes in the vision, they can check out my experience, everything that backs up my background and my desire to make this community great. So if anyone wants to donate, if anyone goes to the website, they can see there in the word, I have a map there, and they can vote for me, they can learn more, they can reach out. So those are the ways that people can actually support the change that we need.
Absolutely. So tell us that website again.
diana4ward6.com.
And it's the number 4 or FOR?
FOR.
FOR Ward 6. Okay, good. The last question on this, just to tell us again when your election is.
So the primary is August 18th.
And this is an open primary?
Yes, this is a nonpartisan race, and it's an open primary, and there are other candidates that are running. So I really need the support of this community. I need to cast the vote so I can claim 51% of the votes, and I can become the next city council for Ward 6.
All right, great. So that is the primary. And anybody who's a registered voter, is it just in Ward 6?
Correct. Yeah, these are specific of the ward in the city of Fort Myers. So only the people that live in the ward can actually vote. But
Great.
But you don't have to live in the ward to support me.
Absolutely. That's a good point.
Right.
So everybody can support Diana, but you have to be in the ward to vote for her. You need to be registered. The deadline to register to vote is coming up on July 20th. So make sure you get that. Also make sure that you get your vote by mail. Get your vote by mail just in case. You can still, if you feel comfortable and everything is great with the coronavirus at the time, you can go to the polls on August 18th. But all you have to do is take that ballot with you. But you can definitely want to have that vote by mail just in case you need it. And you can send it in to vote for Diana and also me. I'm also on the ballot. You have to be a registered Democrat to vote for me. Anybody who lives in District 19 in Southwest Florida, that's Boca Grande all the way to Marco Island, will be able to vote for me if you are registered as a Democrat. But anyone, regardless of their party affiliation, that lives in Ward 6 can vote for Diana on August 18th. So thanks once again, Diana, for being with us. Diana Giraldo, running for Fort Myers City Council, Ward 6, fantastically wonderful, talented, experienced person on the technical side of government and planning, architecture, sustainable development. She really does it all. And I was so honored to have you here with us today, Diana. Thank you.
Cindy, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm super grateful for you. And let's get this election and let's get moving forward because we really need this change. I appreciate your time and the opportunity to be here with you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Dr. Cindy Speaks. If you'd like to learn more about her campaign, go to cindybanyai.com or connect with her directly at vote@cindybanyai.com. We love connecting with people. Contents of this podcast are paid for and approved by friends of Cindy Banyai.